let's just see from my initial pick how well I did on this guy. So we have 512 by 512. So whatever you choose, I would start there. It's an easy number, and it's a good number to use, and it's easy to remember. I'm going to go to Filter. I'm going to go to Other. I'm going to go to Offset. And here, you probably have 0. I'm going to type in 256. So I'm going to type in half by 256 and hit Enter. Okay? So I did a lot better this time than I did last. You can see already it almost tiles. Almost. So you can see I do have some hiccups here where I have some colorization issues where, let me highlight it. This part here is see this part here is a continuation of these, this wicker. Mm-hmm. It looks like this here is a continuation of that, right? You see that? But I've lost the definition here where this part folds underneath, so maybe I want to add like a dark line there to make that look a little bit better. Okay? So I'm just going to Control D to get off that. So with something like this, maybe I can just come in here with a marquee selection of what I want. Okay? And you can always use your arrow keys in a marquee selection to move stuff around pixel by pixel. I'm just going to move this right about here. I'm going to hit Control C and Control V. It should copy and paste it in the exact same spot. And if you don't get the translation tools, just click up here on the little box up here. I always have those show up. For some reason it is not a default setting, but once you click it, it should be there for any time you have a layer selected that's not locked. And now I can just grab this and just stretch this down. It's basically, see how it's compressing, now I'm stretching. So it's basically like a lattice in a way. So I'm just going to stretch that down and hit Enter. So I've continued that down. And again, how much this is in a tile, that stretch, because I'm stretching with the grain on this type of image, it's not going to be noticeable. If this was, say, a wood floor, this probably would not be the smartest quick fix because it would be very obvious that you've stretched the grain. Maybe you'd have to find another piece and kind of piece it back together. Okay. I want to also kind of get a little bit more of a shadow underneath here, so this looks right. So maybe I'm going to Control Copy. So you can see it's not letting me copy. It says blah blah blah, it's empty. It's because I'm on this layer. I need to go back to my base layer where the image is, and I'm going to paste a copy here. So here I have a copy of this right on top of itself. And now I'm going to add a new layer in between here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring in my little my brush. That's way too big, obviously. And I'm going to bring in my brush right here. I'm going to color pick something like that and kind of paint that in so you can see it's underneath that layer. And I'm going to change that paint as a multiply and just kind of tone that down just a tad. And I'm going to move this down with my arrow keys just a little bit. I just want to try to get the feel that something is that these ones are underneath. Okay. And I could come, if it's still a little powerful, I could come over here and blur it just a hair.
How did you do that? What?
So, I'm going to undo this a little bit. I'm actually going to do 2 copies of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tone this one down, bring up a second copy by holding Alt, and this one I'm going to blur and something like that, and kind of bring that one up just a little bit. And again, yours doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Just kind of showing you a couple ways that I can add a little bit of depth. So now I've added like a little bit of a shadow, so to try to make it look like these ones are in fact on top of it. Maybe I should also do something similar. You know, right here, these ones are supposed to be on top of those ones.
If it's quick question, so if it's on top, then you put a shadow at the bottom of it?
Well, I did. I just want to try to get that looking. I just want to give it. I'm just trying to give that a little bit of depth, so it feels like those ones are underneath that one. If that's the way it is.
Okay.
I believe that's the way it is. I hope I got it right. I think so. I think that's how it is. So it's just touching that up, just you know, hair. Again, if these ones are you know, underneath these ones, maybe I come in here and bring in a new layer. Oh, that's my pattern fill. I don't want that. And maybe I come in here and then run a little bit of a blur action. Something like this. And just kind of tuck it in there. And I don't want it to be a completely hard line, so maybe I'm going to come in here and kind of erase a little bit. Just something to make it look like the other one is kind of sitting on top. Holy cow, the color of the projectors is way different than my monitor. So, but that's okay. So once you kind of get it kind of touched up the way that you like, okay? Before I go and I flip it again, if I come back and I have it selected and I go back to my offset, you can see that all the other things are just stay there. Usually I just flatten everything. If you don't flatten everything, those are going to stay in their position. You could select all the layers and you could link them together, and I believe now they would all re-offset. Nope, they still don't. So that doesn't work. So I guess you do have to flatten. So flatten is just select all. You just you don't even have to select anything actually. If you don't select, if you want to only flatten certain layers, like say I just want to flatten these, just select those and Control E. If you just want to flatten everything, you don't have to have anything selected. Control Shift E will just flatten the whole document of anything that's visible. Okay, so Control Shift E will flatten everything out. And now I can come back over here and re-offset, and now it's placed back together how it was originally. And I always want to go back and check to make sure I didn't create a seam on the edge that's now back in the middle. So I think this looks alright.
Ease offset.
Huh?
What ease offset?
So an offset is basically taking how much you want and then flipping it inside out. So it gives you an idea on how it's going to tile. Because when this tiles, this corner up here is going to match up, right, to another corner. So there's one other thing that I think I want to do before I would take this and try to create my normal and my spec. Like I said, I mean, here I have this really prominent highlight that's there, and so I kind of want this to have flat lighting and let the specular and the normal map handle it. Okay. So there's a few tools to try to address this.
So we do it again.
A lot of them
I'm doing it.
honestly don't work very well. Like, so if you've ever done any photography, you have a burn tool that's supposed to allow you to burn out highlights, or you can change this to shadows and stuff like that. Burn tool doesn't honestly do anything good other than burn stuff. As you can see, it kind of just makes it black. It doesn't really darken it based on pigment. The dodge tool, on the other hand, lightens everything, and this, unlike the burn tool, it actually, in my opinion, works pretty good. And then there's the sponge tool that gives you the option to desaturate something, take out color, or you can resaturate something, which allows you to increase its color or saturation. So with this highlight, there's a few tools. You could try the spot heal tool and just try to drag it down and see if you can get a good heal from it. A lot of times it will just try to correct what's around it. I find usually what I like better is the heal brush tool. And the heal brush tool, if you just try to use it like the spot tool, will say, hey, you need to do this. So it'll give you a tooltip. It'll say hold Alt and click to define the source and then repair the image. So usually I'll use this and just go close to where I want to, like right here. Hold Alt and click. And then you can get an interactive window of what it's going to look like. And then I'm just going to drag down. And you can see that that will kind of merge together those the reference of where it's healing from. So I can do the same thing here. I'm going to hold Alt right here, pretty close. But I kind of want to line up these lines, see if I can get something decent. So maybe something like that. And I'm just holding Shift to get a straight line from it. Okay, that's a little wobbly right there. Obviously, I don't like that that much. I would fix that. But, oops. And maybe I'm going to try to spot heal here. Just to try to get rid of some of these kind of really strong highlights. Okay. Another thing that I'll sometimes do is I'll come in with my paint bucket and I'll try to pick the neutral color within it. So I'll kind of try to find where it is, and I'll paint it over, and I will just use this as a like a multiply or a maybe as a soft light type deal, and just try to get something that'll add a uniform color over the whole image. If there's color problems, you can always try Photoshop's auto color correct tools that will fix some stuff. Sometimes it does some things that are a little interesting. So be wary of that. Like this is, I think, drastically changed the wicker, but I think that's probably getting a little bit more on my screen. It's not quite so orange, but I think on my screen it's a little bit more of a natural wicker color. That probably looks a little bit more accurate up there, but okay. Now, once if you're still not getting the color right, you can come up here to hue saturation, and you can do master layer, and you can change the overall color of the whole image if you want, or just say in here For instance, if you push enter, you'll just close out the screen. I can, instead of doing master, I can say, okay, well, it looks like the reds are coming in too hot. I can click reds, and I can either adjust just the red channel, okay, and I can increase the saturation of just the reds, or I can dial those back. It looks like the magenta needs to be maybe toned down a little bit. But you can, overall, if you just select a channel and then just crank it up, you can see, okay, well, there's really nothing in the blue channel, nothing's changing there. What about the yellow channel? So a lot of info in the yellow channel right now. Maybe I want to tweak that one a little bit. Is it okay? And you always can toggle back and forth with Control Z, and it does see, maybe it's just that minor change. It doesn't need, a lot of these changes and tweaks near the end are not going to be these super, super drastic changes. Sometimes with some of these tools, you know, a little bit bigger brush. Oops. And you don't have to. On that one you do, but you can't change how you want this to interact. You want to heal based on normal, replace it completely, screen, multiply, you know, color, etc. So, but I'm going to call this for now. It's not all that amazing, but we're going to call this good for right now. And I'm going to then go to image size. And I'm just going to shrink mine down to 256. And I don't have these linked, so I need to change this one as well. Hit OK. And if I want to see how this is going to tile, all I do is come up here to Edit, Define Pattern. Okay? So Edit, Define Pattern. Define pattern, I can call this whatever I want. I'm just going to call this wicker test. And I've defined the pattern at 256. I can come over here. There's other ways, again, how to do this, but this is just usually how I do it. And I'm going to do a 1024 by 1024 document. I'm going to go to my paint bucket. And usually a paint bucket is going to do a fill color, or, you know, if you right click you get a grade, you can do gradient. But on paint bucket, if you come up here to the top, you can say instead of foreground, you can do pattern. Okay? And then once you'll get a little icon to the right of that, go down, and I'm going to select the little icon that we just made, and I'm going to click it, and I can see where it's tiling. If I zoom in, you can see right here, it looks like I have a little seam, huh?
How did you get it to show up in the pattern section?
So, again, if you don't have any, you can select just a portion, but if you don't have anything, it'll do the whole canvas space. So you just do Edit, Define Pattern. You gotta define the pattern first. Just, you can name it or leave it as is, hit OK. And then when you do your paint bucket, up at the top, instead of having foreground, you need to choose pattern up here. And then click on the drop down on the right, and then select the pattern fill that you want. Okay.
What size did you make? You changed
Oh, perfect.
I changed mine to 256
I don't know.
by
I think mine's pretty good.
256, which I think is going to be plenty for what we're doing. Okay. So this has, you can see, if you zoom in real quick, you can see that my tile has an issue. right here, it's not very prominent, but you can see this little light line coming through. It looks like that there is a seam. Still trying to get Photoshop to work?
It stops responding when you're in. So
I missed the file.
frustrating.
I was just